Hello, and welcome to Appleton Engaged. I'm your host, Timber Smith, DEI Coordinator for the City of Appleton.
And I'm Andy Anam, the Communications Manager for the city.
And Appleton Engaged is a podcast that explores the many people, organizations, and resources that make our community a great place to live, work, and play. So whether you're a longtime resident or just getting to know Appleton, join us as we learn more about our community together.
The catchline or the tagline of this organization is, "We are there to support you on your worst day." And they work with local law enforcement agencies and emergency personnel in the Fox Valley in order to provide on-scene support to victims of crime and other traumatic events.
I feel like this is going to be an amazing conversation, and I don't know a lot about this resource, so I'm really excited to learn more. I think this is going to be really good for our Appleton Engaged listeners also. So this week's guests are Sheryl Dingman, Volunteer Coordinator and Community Outreach Manager, and Burgundy Biletski, Executive Director for Fox City's Victim Crisis Response Team. Hello, you two. How are you both doing?
Good, thanks.
Really good. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. You ready to jump in?
Yes, both feet.
Both feet. Yes, that's exactly what we need here on Appleton Engaged. Can you please tell us about yourself and your association with Appleton and the Fox Cities region? Sheryl, let's start with you.
Okay. I am Sheryl Dingman. I have been with the organization for 5 years, but I have lived in the Winnebago Outagamie area for 24 and a half years, I would say. I moved here from Arizona to raise my son. So I have family here, and that's why I moved here. And I decided that being able to help somebody in this community is exactly what my heart has always desired. I've always been in the field of serving others. And so when I found this organization, that's how I got involved.
So trading really hot for snow, which do you like better?
The snow.
Okay.
You can always put more clothes on. You can only take so much off when you are in the heat.
True. Facts.
My name's Burgundy Biletski, and I recently moved to the area, Oshkosh, about 2.5 years ago. I've been with the organization for 2 years now. I have a background in nonprofit. Originally, I came from nonprofit sport, but there are a ton of parallels, and I am really enjoying working with this organization. I feel like the cause is incredible, and the volunteers are even more amazing.
Facts. All right. Can you please share with us about your resource?
So we are the Fox City's Victim Crisis Response Team. We are located, our offices are actually located at the Grand Chute Police Department in Grand Chute. And we have been in existence for about 25 years. So it originally started at Neenah PD, and then it also went through Appleton PD. And now we are affiliated with 14 different police departments.
Wow.
And so we provide on-scene response by law enforcement. So they request us out to the scene. And then our volunteers go and they provide support to any kind of victim that's on scene. So it could be for any type of situation. It could be for a homicide. It could be for a domestic. It could be for an overdose. It could be for a death notification. There's just so many different types of scenes that we respond to. And so it really has been able to make a difference in so many people's lives in the community.
How many people are on the team? Because, I mean, you named a number of police departments. How big is the footprint?
So we have 58 volunteers.
Wow.
And that is the largest it's been since I have been with the organization. So when I joined, there were only 28, and now we're at 58. So
what's the history of the organization when it came to be established, and what were these PDs doing before the organization came into effect?
So the PDs were just dealing with what they can do on scene as law enforcement, which they are very limited because their job is to take care of the investigation. They obviously are dealing with the victims, but they only can do so much. And they have found the need that serving the victim and trying to get them connected to longer term resources that will be able to help them get established and figure out the right path that they need to go on to. So if we're talking about a domestic violence situation, getting them connected to a domestic violence shelter, we're talking about the Safe House program. We are talking about the Power and Control Wheel. We want them to understand the safety and what is needed and what to look for, the different patterns of behavior. So I'm just using that as one instance of a type of call that we go on to. As far as how it started, it's my understanding that it started with clergy at just one or two of the different PDs who they also, so we have clergy through Outagamie County Sheriff's Office and we have clergy through Winnebago County Sheriff's Office. And for the different two counties that we respond to. So for Outagamie County, if they felt a need for extra services than what law enforcement could provide, they would call a clergy out. So that is how it got started. And then they thought, well, what if we got some volunteers going and then we could, train them to get, victims to understand, like, here, we are here to support you. You're not alone in this. This isn't something that you have to stand and go through this by yourself. So that's how it literally got started. And then it just started to grow from there. And for a long time, we were out of Appleton PD as well. And they had just certain weeks that they would respond. And now we're 24/7, we're 365. We get paged out at all hours of the day and night for all different types of calls. So,
all right. So I noticed you used the word volunteer. Is everyone primarily a volunteer except for leadership, or is there a mix of both paid and volunteer?
We have 2 paid staff, so Sheryl and myself, and then the rest, the other 58, are all volunteer.
Wow. So these are volunteers that show up to support their community member.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like, I think we see a lot of trauma and a lot of tragedy, but the silver lining in it is like the volunteers that, are willing to be with people during these like really difficult times.
So what are the backgrounds of these volunteers? Because I believe they come into a very intense situation, traumatic events, which is also like sometimes very heavy for the person who is counseling another one. So what kind of training do they go through, or do you look for some sort of background in law enforcement to recruit these volunteers?
We have all types and I would say like a lot of variety in ages. Our youngest being like in the early 20s to our oldest being, we have some retired people, teachers, people that are in mental health, a big variety, a lot of women. We have gotten a few men in the last few trainings, which is great because sometimes that male influence helps, connect with other males. We've always been trying to look to become a bit more culturally diverse, especially with languages. We are fortunate that we can use the tools that law enforcement have for language translation, but we have been, we could really use like some Spanish speaking volunteers. It is something that has kind of been in our search. Training, I'll let Sheryl speak to that because she does the training, but our training is very includes a lot of different types of variety. And then additionally, after training, we pair them up with a mentor. So they have someone to really connect with and answer questions and really help them on scene and debrief.
So when training happens, we do about 25 hours of in-classroom training, and that entails, actually, let me back up, because when we do the interview process, we do a background check. They do have to be fingerprinted. Because we work with law enforcement, there is a specific, you can't have multiple felonies sitting on your background and then I'm bringing you out on scene for the same type of things that you committed kind of thing. So with that, we have to be very selective in who we are bringing out, but we're also looking at, can they be comfortable with silence? Because silence is powerful on scene. A lot of times we feel the need to fill that void because it's uncomfortable for a lot of people. So we talk about that right in the interview. In training, we bring in a coroner. We bring in a law enforcement panel. So I'll bring in several different law enforcement from different agencies, and they all talk about their experiences with VCRs on scene. We we do some role playing, and the role playing is pretty powerful too, because you can put people in that position and train them in what that intensity potentially could be like. We have some really good actors and actresses on our team. They love that whole role playing stuff. So, but it's a lot of classroom type. We try to pound it out in a whole weekend so that, it's done. And then we get them linked up, like Burgundy said, with a mentor, because they're not going out on scene, obviously, as fresh meat. So,
no,
Totally.
that you don't,
No.
you could walk into anything.
Yep. And you don't know what you're getting. You sign up. We have 2 apps that we work off of. So we have one that's a calendar and one's a communication app. And, I might sign up between 2 a.m. and 10 a.m. And if a call comes out between that, then I'm responsible for responding.
So you gave us kind of a small, what I'm going to guess is a small snippet of the type of calls. What's the type of call that you get that we might not be thinking of as a listener, right? Because you kind of mentioned like domestic abuse and maybe, is there something that we're not thinking of that there is a reason to call?
So there really is. I mean, I would say an example that maybe people don't really think about would be a death notification. So let's say a specific individual was in a car accident. They passed away in that car accident. And now law enforcement, after they get done with that investigation, has to go and make that notification to the family member. So they will call VCRs to come and assist them with that notification. While they are the ones that are delivering the terrible news, we're the ones that are there to catch them, to support them, to let them know what's going to happen next, to give them a list of maybe funeral homes that are in the area. As nobody's allowed to, in our group, nobody is allowed to suggest a specific funeral home. It's a business, right? So
Right.
The families typically decide what they want, but we give them that list and say, when you guys are ready, this is what will happen. You will get a phone call from the medical examiner. You are going to need, here's a list of all the things you're going to need to do for your deceased family member. Maybe you need to contact Social Security. Maybe you've got to contact VA benefits. Maybe you have to call their life insurance. There's just things that people don't think about, and we have those lists to say, here you go. We can help with that. So maybe another one, I'll say another one is a house fire.
Yes.
So, somebody loses everything. We have this pamphlet put together that has front and back list of all the different places that you can email or call. Maybe you lost all the birth certificates, or maybe it's the passports, or maybe it's you don't understand why your water is a certain color going back into the home. Well, that's because the fire department has to do X, Y, and Z with it, a lot of times in the winter to make sure that pipes aren't freezing. There's just so many things that people don't think about, but we have this list to say, here, this is to help you. Here's a place to start. And then it's kind of that little Band-Aid that we put on a gaping wound for just that little bit to try and get them connected to that next.
So is there a story at this time which you want to share with us so that it shows like exactly what is the impact of the organization and what kind of scenario you normally run into?
So I think the one that really stands out most recently for me was I was called in the middle of the night to a really severe strangulation domestic violence case. And this victim was by themselves. They had zero support. Law enforcement was there with them. But this was by far, in my 5 years, the worst strangulation case that I have encountered, and I've been on a lot of them. I would say this woman was within seconds of dying, is how bad it was. The marks on her neck, the bruising on her arms and her chest. And I was there for 5.5 hours with her, being able to sit there and kind of talk about what her life has been like over the last several years, and her not being able to recognize the kind of relationship she was in, and not being able to recognize the isolation that she had been put in, not allowing her to work, not allowing to have a car, these types of things. And they're not things that people really think about until somebody says, well, do you understand? They're pulling you away from everything and everyone so that they can have that ultimate control over you. So being able to talk about the power and control wheel, we talked about what she can do to keep herself safe. We talked about what's going to be best for her and her kids. So,
Burgundy, do you have a story?
Yeah, and I'll bring in a little other kind of thing that we do as an organization that maybe isn't our, first thing that we talk about. We generally talk about on-scene response, but we also do crime resolution support calls. So we have several departments that participate in this program, and what it is it's cases where, there's maybe a robbery, a theft, identity theft, sometimes domestic violence, just a kind of wide range of different cases that are out there. We call the victims and see if there's any additional resources they could benefit from and, how they're doing. A lot of times it won't resolve in them maybe getting money back if they were involved in a fraud case, but it is giving them some resources and connecting them with some community partners that may be able to help them, like Levin, or just some, some ways to find things
pillars.
Pillars or things that they might need in that time. So I did work with one gentleman who was older, and he had been told to put $25,000 into Bitcoin, which was his life savings. And I mean, it's just incredibly sad to hear, the strain that's caused him. And we were able to connect him with some resources, send him some, some ways that maybe he could help, get out of that situation. Like I said, it might not get the money back, but at least it's like something. And, a lot of people are like, thank you for the call. Kind of gives that human touch to the police department, and they know that they're cared about. And even though maybe their case in the end isn't completely solved, it's some follow-up and it's something to help them with. Additionally, we have a bit of a library as well. Some victims don't maybe want to go to community partners or go to therapy or go to groups. So we do have books on kind of everything, like domestic violence workbooks, because sometimes people are like, no, I don't want that. I don't want to go to the shelter. I don't want to talk to someone. Well, what about a book? Oh yeah, I like to read. Okay, so we'll send them some books. We have them on different topics, a lot of different grief books, because we do deal with a lot of sudden death, grief books for children, grief books for teens. We do have one that we've been giving out quite frequently lately is, when a parent goes to jail, helping, parents deal with that situation, because that can be like a real tough one.
Oh, I can imagine. So, and I think you might have answered my question, but I just want to clarify this. So I definitely know that when there is something that happens, an incident happens, you can be called upon and you respond. Do you do follow-up later on also? Or is it really most of what you do is at the time of incident?
Yeah, there's a follow-up. All the volunteers decide on scene after when they debrief, okay, who's going to do the follow-up. The follow-up kind of depends on the situation. So if it's a sudden death, it might be after the funeral. So after things have kind of calmed down, okay, are there any other resources that you'd like to connect with? Or sometimes in the midst of trauma, people are like, no, I don't want that. I don't want to join that group. And then, a week later, you're like, okay, well, there is like Community for Hope, say if there's a suicide, or Prevent Suicide if there's a suicide. And they're great organizations that will really help you go through this trauma. They have groups and stuff like that. And then people might be like, okay, yeah, connect me with that. So it kind of depends on the situation. A domestic violence one might be sooner, depending on the situation. But yeah, we do one follow-up. We try not to do a lot of long-term because we don't want to duplicate services. There's a lot of, like in the Valley, we have so many different organizations that help and that do long-term, do help long-term, and that's who we're trying to connect them with. But we're trying to get them to know of those resources, because a lot of people, if they haven't experienced these things, they don't know what's out there.
Are there any upcoming initiatives, events, or engagement opportunities?
So a lot of what we do is community outreach with different law enforcement. So if they have, for example, maybe National Night Out is in August. So all the different police departments that we work with all have a different park, usually that they set up, and so that the entire community can come to that. Usually Appleton does Pierce Park, Grand Chute does, Legion Park, and it just, they spread it all out. And so we split up our VCRs to go to all the different parks with the different agencies, and we do games with the kids, and we have prizes, and we have literature, and we talk to people about what we do. And our team loves doing that kind of stuff. There's also times that the fire departments will also reach out if they are having like a certain family fun thing that they have going on that time. And so we help out a lot with that.
We've been really fortunate in Rolling Thunder Lanes, and Nina did a benefit for us for the last couple of years, a bowling tournament. It's a suicide awareness one, and that happens usually like in January. We just actually had a fundraiser recently a few weeks ago with like the Midwest Restoration Foundation. So yeah, we've been really fortunate. The community has been very generous, and we do have some, donations here and there come in from different organizations, different people. Yes, we've been very fortunate for those.
So the primary structure of the organization is such like it's always contacted by the PDs, or an individual in some capacity can also come to your organization seeking help?
So yes, the answer is that the PDs are the ones who page us out to on-scene response. We do have at times that where parts of the community will actually go onto our website or call and say, hey, this happened to us. And then we will walk them through whatever that is. If it's a criminal act, then we have to get them connected with some kind of law enforcement in order for us to be able to go, okay, there's certain criteria that we have to meet in order to do certain things with those victims. And if it's crime related, then because we're funded by the VOCA grant, which is the Victims of Crime Act grant, that is our primary funding source. So those donations and fundraisers all are a big deal for us because we're only allotted, as most government agencies are, how much money you're going to get for that grant. And it changes every 3 years for us?
Yeah, we're coming up on a competitive cycle, and unfortunately, there's been a drastic reduction in VOCA funding. So it went from $43 million to $13 million, and there's a lot of agencies that rely on this funding. So it'll be interesting, and we've kind of been relying on getting some fundraisers in case we have a reduction in funding. We've been preparing for that. We also recently have partnership with the Winnebago County Health Department, and for us to go out and respond to deaths of despair, which we've kind of already been doing. So it's been great to, make that connection and make that funding connection for something that we do respond to a lot of sudden deaths.
So in the light of this reduced funding, what can community can do for you to be helpful? Because it's an important arm and leg of the police.
Right now, we are kind of like in a stage where it's a bit tricky in that I don't want to, go and aggressively try to find funding when we could potentially be a recipient of funding, because I don't believe that we should take more than we need. But we have been preparing, and any, donations and fundraisers and stuff like that do definitely help. Kind of been just, collecting funds in case. So
Who can people contact if they would like to learn more?
So we are always looking for volunteers. And so in that case, you're going to go on our victimcrisisresponse.org is our website. And you can click on the volunteer application button. It's right up at the top, and fill that out. It comes directly to both of us, and then we reach out. So we will do, our next training will be in early fall, because we do it twice a year, and we just are finishing up with the mentees getting out on scene for this last class. So yeah, victimcrisisresponse.org is our website.
Is there any additional info that you feel is important for the Appleton Engage listeners to know that maybe we didn't ask a question about?
I would say maybe for in regards to volunteering, is sometimes people, they want to volunteer and then they contact us and then they're like, okay, I want to get started tomorrow. And it's like, well, it doesn't work that way. There's just a lot that goes into training. So we only have those 2 intake periods. So if you do reach out, just kind of to be aware that it may be a bit of a wait, just because the training is very extensive and we have to do a lot of work to even get to the training part. If you follow us on Facebook, we generally put in a call for volunteers closer to the time that we're looking, and then we'll put in kind of like a last call, and then that will be the time that we're going to be contacting.
I think the other thing that I really want to highlight is that, yes, we are paged out by law enforcement, but if there is a big scale, well, let me back up. We are paged out and primarily cover all of Outagamie County and all of Winnebago County. So we go as far north as Omro, as far north as Oneida, and as far south as Omro. So it's a very wide range that we cover. But with that being said, if there was a larger scale thing that happened outside of our primary area, that doesn't mean that we aren't going to go and help out. We've had major things that have happened when they had the shooting in Las Vegas. We had VCRs that were asked to come out there and help with that debrief, helping victims. If you think about how big Vegas is and how big that situation was, the amount of trauma that affects people, secondary, third, and what trauma does to the body and the brain, it really makes a difference to have somebody sitting there by your side and letting them know, you know what, it's okay that you feel this way. It's okay that you're scared. It's okay that you have these emotions and that you're angry right now, because trauma leaves a lasting impact on our life.
So before I move to the shout out, I have a quick question. Like, do you have to also counsel the volunteers themselves? Because even if you train them, they're still not ready for what they will be seeing.
That's a really good question.
Yeah, we have access to 2 different specific trauma-informed therapists. So if anyone needs to see anyone, we book an appointment. We try to get everyone in for a wellness check every year. So we really do try to take care of the volunteers as best as we can.
And I'm super, super big on checking on my team. I am constantly reaching out and checking on them. We do preach self-care. You have to in this field, because we see things that most people shouldn't, just like law enforcement sees things that most people shouldn't. And you just have to pick up and go to the next call. So when you think about that, and you have to compartmentalize it to get through it. So when we have those really tough homicide calls, or we have really tough calls that involve children, that it leaves a lasting impact on the team. So
time for shout out. Who do you want to send your shout out to?
I definitely want to shout out my director sitting here next to me, Burgundy, because without her, this organization would not be what it is. I also would like to shout out all the volunteers that give their time so effortlessly, that it's 24/7, that they get up and they take these calls without missing a beat, and getting out there and doing what they do and making a difference in our community.
Yeah, I definitely want to shout out our team and Sheryl. She's like one of the most passionate people I've ever met. There is no one that loves this program more than Sheryl, or more passionate about an organization that I've ever met is Sheryl being passionate about this organization. The volunteers, definitely a huge shout out. 3 a.m., they're waking up in the middle of winter and going to be with someone in such a difficult situation. Shout out to anyone who's contributed, donated to us, no matter how small people think it is, it makes a difference. We've had, cash donations. We've also had donations of, some stuffed animals and blankets. We do not need more blankets right now, though, but we have had, the community has been great at giving us blankets, Kleenex, things that we need on scene, and all of our community partners that, once we've touched the victims and passed them off, that give them that long-term support. We have some really great organizations here in the community.
Okay. Burgundy, Sheryl, thank you. At this time, Appleton Engage listeners, we're going to start wrapping up this episode. I want to just say thank you for giving us your minds and ears. Thank you for caring about this community and wanting to learn about another amazing resource out here, making our community a better place. We are trying to become the top podcast in Northeast Wisconsin. And how do we do that? We need your assistance with that. So, a couple of things you can do. A, would you like to be a guest? B, would you like to recommend a guest? Or if you just have suggestions on how we can improve our format or improve the show, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at diversity at appleton.org. Once again, that is diversity at appleton.org. Also, once again, we think we have something very special here at this podcast, making our region, making our community a better place. And the more eyes and ears that could learn about Appleton Engage, the more people could learn about these amazing resources. And we need your help with some analytics. So while you're listening to this podcast, if you take a moment and press the subscribe button, or take a full minute and fill out a nice review for us, that improves our analytics. The better the analytics, the more eyes and ears learn about this amazing podcast known as Appleton Engaged.
Today's episode is one of those thought-provoking episodes that will always stay close to my heart. And that's why we always say that we are blessed to be in a region, in a community that helps and support these organizations. So thanks, both of you. I learned a lot today. And to my diverse listeners, if you have other language skills and want to be part of the organization, please reach out to them, and you can check out their website, because they need you. They need you for the victims they meet. They need you for remarkable things. You can change someone's life. So think about it and do get in touch with them. Until next time, stay thoughtful, stay curious, and stay engaged.